always hung out with the girls. Always hung out with the girls. Always hung out with the girls they accepted me.
I'm doing fine, still rocking the him. You can't hear me. Okay.
I'm doing quite well. Also rocking the he him. Yeah, and bad lighting as well. So so with you on that front too. Mm-hmm. I think so. I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% sure, but I kind of figured that regardless of where it ends up going, that I'll happily roll with either. I am technically a member of two different cultures. I also noticed a lot of cultural shifts. Just like, well, I mean, I guess all trans people can kind of speak to this a little bit, but the way cultures treat women and the way cultures treat men, if you are perceived on either binary identity, it's that's been illuminating.
One moment, sorry, there was a technical issue. Apparently Streamlabs decided to hate my mic. So to reintroduce myself, I am Ozma In The Dark, still using she they pronouns. Just so you know what was going on. I could hear everyone else, just not me.
I jinxed it by talking about technical difficulties when I initially joined the call. This is my fault. It's me.
You invited the gremlins.
Oh, those darn gremlins. But yeah, sorry, my brain missed the last part because I was trying to sort out technical stuff because you're talking about because you mentioned being in having been in two different cultures, and then I noticed the somewhere in that sentence I noticed the no audio on Ozma to YouTube. Thank you, by the way.
I am. I was talking about how I'm Canadian and Bahamian, and that has been interesting to navigate, of course, with COVID having been a thing. I haven't been down to the Bahamas since very shortly after I started my transition. Now, when I was down there, I was being read as masculine for the first time in my life, being in the islands. Huh. And that was definitely interesting. But unfortunately, I haven't been down since. So it's kind of hard to say exactly how things are going to be now that I'm like a lot more masculine and can't really be down there as a Bahamian citizen anymore because well, they would be a little bit confused by some things.
Well, so which license related problem would it be?
So I have both a Canadian and a Bahamian passport, and my Bahamian passport still has like my dead name, my old gender, like all of that stuff listed because it's not actually, you can't legally change. You can change your name. You can't change your gender in the Bahamas, at least not yet. Hopefully one day. But basically, if I go down there, I basically have to either convince them I'm a woman when I'm clearly not, based on interacting with me and like obviously I'm not, or I just travel as a Canadian tourist. And pretend not to be a citizen.
Well, I know which one I would choose in your circumstance, and the Canadian citizen.
Yep.
Yeah. Tourism.
Yes. Which is like rough if I want to work, but yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah. So like, how did the general populace treat you? Because like what the government does and what the general populace does aren't always the same things, but sometimes they align on some ways and sometimes they don't.
So that was actually something I found very interesting, was given that I was sort of early on in my transition, it was primarily white Bahamians who were actually misgendering me and assuming that I was female. I guess like maybe looking for specific traits. But more often when I was interacting with Black Bahamians, they were gendering me correctly. So they were just sort of assuming that I was masculine based on my presentation and everything. And that was really interesting. And it led to sort of some, I've, actually talked about this a little bit with foreign man in a foreign land, because, he's Bahamian, but about how I could be in a situation where one person was misgendering me and one person was gendering me correctly. And depending on how I responded, that could like sort of change the dynamic of the conversation and change how I was getting treated. It was also because a little bit complicated because my family at the time was still kind of, particularly my parents, still kind of getting used to, the pronouns, the name, that sort of thing. And so if they were slipping up and not gendering me correctly, then it was like kind of outing me in those situations as well.
Oh.
Generally speaking, people were quite kind. They were polite to me. However, when your queerness is revealed in the Bahamas, this is a potentially dangerous thing. If you're a tourist, they rely a lot on tourism down there. Like it's a very tourism driven economy. There's a little bit more space for you to be that way because, you're not Bahamian. They don't really care, whatever, you're just coming in, you're visiting, then you leave. But if you are Bahamian and known to be Bahamian, it's a very religious culture. And I think it's sort of considered a threat to that aspect of the national identity if you're a queer person, at least openly. So yeah, I don't know if that was a very good answer, but like people treated me nicely as long as they didn't know I was queer.
I mean that sounds like everywhere if you're a lot of places if you're trans.
Yep.
Which is part of the whole passing culture, but like it sounds like even more reason to have just focus on the Canadian passport for safety too. I less aware about that. For some reason, my mind assumes that somewhere, because I don't know how big of a place the that area is, the Bahamas or whatnot.
Yeah, the Bahamas is not a particularly big country. So it's an island nation. Yeah, pretty. I should know the population, but not a lot. not very big.
So wait, would that make it less or more likely for queer subcultures to exist?
Ooh, that. So it's if you're on the mainland, like you're in Nassau. Yeah. Most people are going to probably be pretty like relatively careful if they're in like kind of the hubs, the big cities and stuff. The out islands, I have found, like even as a kid, I knew when there were, queer couples living on the out islands. Okay. So it's sort of like, you have New Providence is like kind of the major island with the like capital city on it and everything. At least I think it's a capital city. I'm a bad Bahamian right now, like being really bad. But going into the more sort of rural areas, I guess you could say they are. So smaller villages throughout the islands, because the communities are so small and people kind of know each other on a personal level. It's generally a little bit safer to be queer there. Now, with that said, at the same time, it's a different experience if you're a white Bahamian versus if you're a black Bahamian too. So I can only speak to like the white Bahamian perspective there as well, that generally it's pretty safe, but there's a whole bunch of like
that is fair. Asked in chat, is the Bahamas mostly Protestant evangelical at this point?
Let me double check. I'm pretty sure Protestant is the majority, but I'm just going to check that. Yes. Yeah, like 80% Protestant. Yeah.
Okay.
Did not know that Catholics were the next biggest number after. The more you know.
Well, I almost made a really ignorant comment. I was like, oh, that makes sense because of in between, like, because islands. So, Sao Paulo must be near Bahamas, right?
Well, it's only one ocean away, so.
Yeah, just a whole ocean.
Exactly. It's just a minor different distance. So, since we're talking about differences, what's it like in Canada? Because like I live in America, so it's very state by state. How I'm treated. There are states in which it's riskier for me to some degree. Like if I go to Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee.
As a Canadian, just what you were describing, observing how the states kind of work, there's this sort of general like queer fear of the states in a lot of ways. But I know that there are some safe places to go, so I shouldn't abstain from any kind of travel down that way. As far as Canada goes, it does vary from province to province. I personally like it's not that bad regardless of where you go. Generally speaking, if you're in the bigger city.
Quebec?
Quebec is actually, so interestingly, Montreal is like a trans mecca. It's like it's a very important, very important space for trans people. So again, the major cities tend to be awesome places to be queer. Canada's pretty solid on that front. I live in British Columbia, which is arguably, it's interesting actually. Luxander just today was asking on Twitter what the most like kind of liberal province in Canada is. And I would say British Columbia is probably at the top of the list, followed closely by Quebec and Ontario.
Oh.
And if you're trans specifically, British Columbia has a trans healthcare program. So they actually have healthcare specifically for trans people that covers certain surgeries, top surgery, bottom surgery, and is working on getting hormones covered as well.
That sounds so, because like that you're saying this stuff, but like how much paperwork is required? How many hoops? Because like I live in Minnesota, so you can get HRT in Minnesota for if you consent to it and you're an adult, and like with a tiny amount of verification sometimes, and sometimes you get a bad doctor or whatnot. And that's HRT is covered by insurance, but I mean Minnesota has its own insurance. I mean insurance throughout states is its own thing, but Minnesota has at the very least fought against the insurance companies making it cosmetic procedure. Like Minnesota has laws, but still hoops to jump through for a lot of that stuff. And facial feminization surgery just got on there. I think New York has it. This is why it's like very different from state to state. You have like this stuff where it's like, because Minnesota, if you make under 1,000, you can dollars a month or whatever, you can, or no, under $1,200 a month, about, you can get like food stamps and insurance from the like federal type insurance. And because of the laws, see, I'm motivated to get help and stay under where I am, because like I can have the state effectively pay for any transition related stuff, so I can get it all for free technically. And certain states have that, but like things like electrolysis are hard to get, but laser hair removal is easy to get. And it's like, it's really weird, and every state is going to be different. And the way conservatives rail about California, you'd think California was further left than it is, but it's really a lot. I'm going way into too much detail about the states, but so what sort of paperwork? Back to the paperwork thing. What sort of paperwork is required, if any? I don't know.
So not a whole lot on your end. The doctor that you go through usually handles all of that. So you can actually go to, as far as I know, you can go to your like GP, so your family doctor, and you can just be like, hey, you know, I would like to start the process of accessing, say, top surgery. Okay. And your doctor can actually kind of help get that in motion, and then that's sort of handled on their end. Okay. For me, I went through a trans care clinic that my doctor actually referred me to when I started HRT specifically, because he said that it would be faster than going to see an endocrinologist. So the referral for an endocrinologist would have taken a really long time. The referral to the trans clinic would have been a lot faster. So I went with the trans clinic, ended up waiting about 6 months before I got on hormones. And then I would check in with them periodically, just to, you know, like check my levels, all of that stuff. And they asked me, you know, if I wanted like top surgery, how I kind of felt about that, and put that process in motion once I said like, yes, that is something I would like to pursue. And what they do is you basically fill out a consent form. You let them know which surgeon you'd like to go with. There's an assortment of different surgeons in the province that you can choose from. And depending on the surgeon that you choose, obviously your wait time is going to be longer. Like one of the more popular surgeons, Christy Abbey. So Dr. Genoway does both top surgery and bottom surgery for trans masc, and I believe trans femme people as well. And her wait list for top surgery is like 2 years long.
Oh, wow.
Which is rough. Yeah. I ended up going with Dr. Clock. So my wait was, I was told it would probably take up to a year. I think it was 2 months after I submitted, or rather the trans care doctor submitted the like request for the consent form rather for top surgery. Dr. Clock's office got in touch with me, and they were like, come in, you know, let's come in for a consult. We'll talk, see how things go. So I saw them about a month later for a consultation. And then 2 weeks after, they called me and they were like, we had an opening come up. Do you want top surgery? And I was like, yes, absolutely. And they were like, cool. It's in like 3 days. And I was like, well, let me have 10 minutes to call all of my clients and see if I can get my work like all sorted out. Yeah. And I will call you back and confirm. So I got the call on a Monday, and then I was in for top surgery on the Thursday, 2 weeks after my consultation. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but basically they do the paperwork, and then you kind of just hope for the best. Sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes you wait a long ass time.
So how is the general populace in Canada been? Because I know you mentioned it briefly, because like what counts as a mecca in Montreal? Because a lot of times that sort of subjective stuff tends to be like, oh, this is a mecca because people don't hate me there, versus this is a mecca where because there is clearly a lot of acceptance and yeah,
like a positive culture towards queer folks. British Columbia is great. Now I spent quite some time living in Vancouver and Victoria, and Vancouver and Victoria both have very like large queer populations. They especially have large trans populations, and I've run into a couple crappy people, like just usually members of other people under the acronym, generally, who just
Oh.
express sort of kind of gatekeepy attitudes towards trans people, but for the most part, not a whole lot of negativity. At least not for me. I'm sure I can't speak for every trans person. Um,
Well, yeah, and we this is why the topic's about transness and not about like how cultures see black people, because we are not experts on that, and
yeah,
uh,
yeah. No, I have talked to like another trans man who is indigenous, and has run into all kinds of like,
oh
am I allowed to swear?
yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're past 5 minutes, so
Okay. All
For
kinds
the
of
past 5
absolute
minutes,
like,
you can swear your fucking head off.
okay, good. Because he has like run into a lot of bullshit, like a whole, just because of course. But of course that's motivated primarily by like blatant racism. More so
Yeah.
than transphobia. So the two things intersect. Transphobia for me hasn't been a huge problem. For the trans feminine friends that I have out here, not really. Like, it's not overly significant.
Well, what does that mean? Not overly significant, like
Well, that it's
is,
sort of, you're aware of your transness. You're aware that there are people out there who might not like you for it. So you do still kind of operate with that, with your guard up.
okay.
But certainly not in the way that you would if you were like in backwater Ontario, right? Sorry, I said that
And
like
my
you
brain
know
is
about
like
backwater
trying to
Ontario.
do all the geography and like, wait, where was on like where's Ontario again? I know where British Columbia is in the western part. Like, is that the island just like the place just off the coast, or am I?
So that's part of British Columbia. British Columbia is basically like the big chunk of Western Canada. So it's a piece of the mountains, and then the coast is the West Coast specifically is British Columbia. Ontario is like Michigan, New York type area. It's kind of
Okay,
their hat. Yeah.
okay, the eastern part
Yeah.
of Canada. Okay, and then Montreal's close. Probably, I think Montreal's the one that's just like a little north and west of where
Yeah.
I
So
am, because in Minnesota. So
Montreal is one of the major cities in Quebec, and so it's like further north.
oh, it's further north than that.
Yeah.
My brain is just. I
That's
don't
okay.
know geography. I'm the worst with Canada geography. I'm an American. What do you expect of me?
I'm awful at geography, like, and answering these questions about Canada and Bahamas. It's just like, oh yeah, these are all things that I should know, and my brain's like, da, 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 da. So like, I feel you. Don't worry.
I mean, to be fair, I do also forget state capitals. So
Oh yeah, I don't know capitals. I don't know capitals at all. I'm one of those people who I'm very, very, very good at this like limited list of things that I'm good at, and then everything else I'm just kind of garbage, and I've just accepted that about myself. I try, but not good at geography. That's the life I live.
um, but
but
yeah.
you do feel certain if you really wanted to, you could be maybe not necessarily good, but much better at it.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. No, if
But
I
it's the
put my mind to it.
reward and is not there. So
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I try to get better at internalizing directions by trying to undo the process of thinking of things in terms of right and left, and trying to think of things solely in terms of north, south, east, and west, because that is how you get good with directions. But then I didn't do that. I didn't do that for more than like a couple weeks. So
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, Perfect. I totally interrupted. Oh, is he gonna say something or?
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right. Then I did not interrupt. That's a weird thing because I like when it comes to directions, I'm very good at navigating. Like if you put me in a car or on foot, just like send me out into the world and go
Yeah.
find this place. I'll find it. I will
Yep.
find it. And once I've driven a route, it's mine now. Like I can find that place again and again and again. Once I've done it once, I know how to get there. I know how to get back. But when it comes to geography and maps and like picturing things and like determining where stuff is mentally, it's just kind of that's not gonna happen.
Well, yeah, I'm similar that way because I do it with landmarks internally. I'm like, oh, it's this street and past, this shop. Oh, okay, we're past that shop. Okay, we are where we're supposed to be. But yeah, is there so uh so you mentioned saying that it would be difficult to work there in the Bahamas. Is that something that interested you before, or just staying there for a while?
So I did work in the Bahamas when I was younger. So like through my late teens, early 20s, I had a job down there. So if ever, I was down for, because I would spend basically half of the year in Canada and then half of the year down in Bahamas. And so while I was there, of course I was there for a long time. So I wanted to like work and save up and everything for school. Now, yeah, I don't think that would be an option because in order to work, you either have to get like, I would probably, it's actually hard to say what would happen because I could apply for a work permit as a Canadian, but then in pursuing that, it would come up that because of my family and everything, they would probably be like, wait, aren't you a Bahamian? So what's with like, why are you pursuing a work permit? And then I would have to be like, well, here's the thing.
I committed all these crimes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Look, it's the better excuse. Just
It would be a red flag, I think. Like I think that if I were to apply for a work permit and they were like, but aren't you like, don't you have family here? Aren't you a Bahamian citizen? Or just seeing that like, oh yeah, we noticed that every single member of your family here like is a citizen, but you're not on there. However, there's this other name that is. I feel like it would just kind of crack it open anyway. I think like at this point, I'm very much of the mind that I should just try. I mean, worst that happens is that they say no. As long as I go to the right office and play my cards correctly and be safe about it. If I go in and I'm like, hey, so I'm legally a man in Canada and legally a woman in Bahamas, y'all want to maybe address that? That's a little like, this is inconsistent. maybe we could fix it. Maybe there's a chance that that could open some doors. Who knows?
I don't because I'm terrible at getting work. So I know nothing.
Well,
Well,
you see, now
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
could just arrange to go to a Bahamian prison, if you were sent to prison, then you could argue it on a human rights issue.
Oof.
See?
Oh God.
I mean, that would definitely start a whole thing. I
That
am
sounds
someone
dangerous. That sounds like increasing the danger.
Oh yeah, no, that would be awful for me. Now
Yeah.
it might get some attention on the issue for trans Bahamians. So there's part of me in my mind that's like, you know what? Maybe that would do it. And then there's the other part of me in my mind that's like, I'm one, not up my own ass enough to be a martyr. And two, I'm very soft and terrified.
And also, like, I'm not going to motivate you to, because, for all I know, I might want to have you as a guest again sometime in the future.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't
Another
want to
good
lose
point.
you.
Also, I'd have to do, I guess I could do something illegal, but I couldn't do something so illegal that I would go to prison, right? Like, because I'm just, I don't know that. Well, I guess I
You
could
don't
just walk
actually
around.
have to serve time in prison, not long anyway. You want
Okay, all right, okay. I see how this plan's coming together. So basically, I just smoke a joint in public and hope for the best.
Wait, that's darn it, that's illegal. I see.
Yep. Oh yeah. Pot possession, definitely illegal.
I mean, technically, it's illegal here too, but Minnesota's getting closer and closer for it not to be illegal. Plus, there's medical marijuana laws, and there's also, I know they finally took off pot off of the drugs you're not supposed to do, and also donate plasma. So,
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. It sounds like they're in a similar place to where Canada was a few years ago. Because now that like weed's been legal for a few years up here, it's weird to think about the fact that there was a time where we couldn't just go outside and smoke a joint, where it wasn't really just normal to like, oh, we're at the grocery store. Do you want to stop in the dispensary and grab some pot on the way home? Like, yeah, why not? Like, do you want edibles? Do you want oil? Do you want like smokables? Like, what do you want? And it's weird thinking that there was ever a time where if like a white sedan pulled up or by, you and your friends just fucking scattered. Like everyone just ran away, huffing and puffing into the woods.
yeah, no, it's still weird that it's illegal here, but I mean, depends on the state. Once again, America decides to be like, have completely different things depending on the state in terms of laws. I mean,
I think
what was that state that almost didn't get rid of slavery until like way too recently? I'm like, I don't remember it.
I'm totally getting us off topic here, but this is when I read about what like some of the things that are legal in some states, I'm really truly blown away. Like places where they are really dragging their heels on queer rights, for example. A lot of them are perfectly cool with child marriage. And I'm like, that seems like a weird mix up in your priorities, y'all. That's an odd one for me.
Yeah, no, but that's also because there's an overall American culture, but there's a lot of American subcultures depending on the state. Like Minnesota pretty much has its own culture. Minnesota is surrounded by decently right-wing states, but there's a bunch of like queer civil rights things that once they got accepted in Minnesota, they stuck. That's kind of how it is. Like someone tried to pass a bill against gay marriage, and it didn't succeed, and then immediately there's a bill to allow gay marriage, and it didn't do the back and forth thing like in California. But yeah, Em brought up we're talking traffic tickets or several packs of gum theft. Nothing scary.
I could steal some packs of gum. I could do that.
I don't know how much. To be fair, I have no idea about the Bahamas and their legal system. So
Bahamas it's a very, very interesting place. And honestly, again, like I'm feeling like a really, really bad Bahamian because everything that I learned about like my other home country has just like whoosh, gone from my brain. If Foreign ever sees this, Foreign, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I like the culture. It's so interesting. someone, a friend of my family once described Bahamas as the only place that you wake up and take a Valium to get going in the morning. Like, it's so laid back. The culture of the people is just so chill, so friendly. Like, the islands are just such a welcoming, wonderful, lovely place. And then there's just these glaring oppositions to this overall attitude that is just really warm and friendly and fun. It's quite dichotomous. That's how I would describe Bahamas. It's very dichotomous. When things are chill, they're really, really chill, and when they're not, they're awful. But that's more on like the kind of legal and religious level. That's where things get kind of intense.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the gender marker can't change. Does that what's the status on HRT or anything in there? Is it all just like illegal, not going to happen in Bahamas, or?
You can access HRT. Like, trans Bahamians definitely exist. There
Okay.
are trans Bahamians.
Well, I mean, there'd be trans Bahamians regardless of whether or not they could get HRT, but yes.
So yeah, let me rephrase. Trans Bahamians who are like transitioning either socially or medically, and are just kind of like hiding in the closet. But let me actually. So I'm just going to, when I don't have information memorized, I can look it up.
True, and you have a better. Sometimes looking stuff up can jog your memory as well. On top of that, and you have a better idea of the context than me, someone who has never been outside of the United States.
But I mean, based on what you were describing, like with how different states can be, it's almost like traveling to different countries when you go from state to state, depending on just how drastic the differences are. I do know that, so in Bahamas, the one thing, and let me open the page. The one thing I'm certain of is that it is like same-sex relationships are legal. So it's legal to have a queer relationship. You can't necessarily be like incarcerated for just being gay, right? Now
they don't have the sodomy laws.
Yeah. Exactly. They don't have an equal age of consent, but let me get the list. So since 1991, no laws against sodomy, like same-sex relationships are legal. There is no equal age of consent. There is no anti-discrimination laws.
What's equal age of consent?
So that would be that like the age of consent for like a heterosexual couple would say that the younger person has to be 18 to consent, or if like depending on where you are, some places have age of consent laws where like if one person's 16, then they can be in a relationship with someone who's 18, even though the 18-year-old person is technically an adult, right? Like because they're within 2 years and both teenagers. So when the equal age of consent is not the same, it basically says that heterosexual people have like the ability to date a wider age range, but this is not true for queer people, for anyone who's in like a homosexual relationship. So basically, like I need to check the legal age of consent in Bahamas, but I'd imagine that it's probably in the 20s for queer relationships. I could be wrong. This is this is me.
Says, isn't the current president of the Bahamas a lesbian? I know nothing about this.
I don't think so. Hold on.
I know nothing about this. Watch, the Bahamas has just changed like so much.
Well, Bahamas has a prime minister, and I'm pretty sure it's a man, right? Yeah. Okay. No, it's you might be thinking of another country. So somewhere in the Caribbean, because Bahamas has a Philip Davis is the prime minister of the Bahamas currently.
Okay. Yeah, I did not. Oh, Em was like, I'm wrong, so I guess. Oh, message retracted. I don't know if that was before or after you verified, but
Well, now we know.
yeah.
No, there's basically, I think the only, I'm looking at the list here. Oh, interesting.
Oh, she's confusing islands. I don't know enough about that area.
It happens. It happens a lot. I've gotten things mixed up before, and I'm like from there, and we've all seen. I'm like, you ask me a question about Bahamas, and I'm like, well, let me just like actually check, because I don't know stuff. But let me just look at this list here. So same-sex marriage, no, definitely not. And that's actually something that I've thought about. Again, if I was feeling bold. So my partner, I'm bisexual, and my partner's a man, and so I was thinking about going down there and having a big gay wedding. And when they're like, you cannot have a big gay wedding here, sir, thank you very much. Gay marriage is not legal. I'll be like, well, I'm legally a woman as far as y'all are concerned. So this is technically completely heterosexual.
Yeah, so I was just about to ask about the gay marriage thing. So gay relationships okay, gay marriage not okay.
Yeah, gay marriage not okay, and that's probably very much the religious angle is where most of that stems from.
I tend to think negatively about this stuff, and I think historically a lot of times in the U.S. For people trying to marry after transition stuff, they try to find whatever way in which you can't get married is how they will interpret the law generally.
Yep.
Is my assumption, because that's how it's worked before.
Yeah. I mean, if that were the case, then they would probably have to legally recognize my gender change.
That could be a significantly better way to force the issue.
Well, I mean, you'd probably have to get lawyers for that for them to legally accept it.
Yeah, but you have to have lawyers on the other way too.
There are people who try to get her just like, no, you can't, or whatever, and then you have to like bring lawyers in to try to make the argument. But like, once again, this is an American thinking, so I don't know technically.
Yeah, but I'm saying both ways would involve lawyers. It's just this way doesn't have any prison time attached.
This is the safer plan.
Yeah, no, that is the safer plan. And also the most FU to anti-gay people plan. This plan has the most FU to people, and which makes me appreciate it. But once again, this might be partially the American speaking.
There's so I've pulled up an article. I hope it's okay if I just reference this, because I remember reading one. So this is from 2019 from the Tribune, down in which is a publication down in the Bahamas, talking about transgender rights specifically. And this says, there has been a vast improvement in the general treatment of transgender Bahamians, a local advocate for the community said yesterday, adding, however, that more still needs to be done in terms of mental health services and in other areas. Now, my understanding, last time I was actually speaking with like another queer Bahamian, is that there's, for many people, there's sort of this, we've seen this in a lot of places. We've seen it in America, in Canada, when you go back, like even just a couple decades, that there's sort of this, everyone, cishet people sort of view gay people and trans people as the same, right?
Yes.
It's just kind of like, oh yes, you're all just the homosexuals, when this, of course isn't true. There's, bisexual people exist and trans people can be straight. And so it's obviously a lot more complicated than that. Now, what I could be wrong here, and I need to stress that I think that as trans Bahamians sort of disentangle that association, where things really need to be careful, like where all of us really need to be careful, is being like, oh no, well, we're not gay, we're trans, and we're transitioning so that we can be straight. So I've seen that kind of attitude pop up before, of like, no, don't worry, we're going to honor God and be heterosexual, so that's why you should let us change our genders, because at least we're not gay that way, right? And I've seen this sort of this issue pop up before. I'm not saying that's what this article is about, but I caught that vibe from someone once. I'll say it that way. Yeah, I caught that vibe from someone, of, people are learning that trans people aren't gay people, and so therefore trans people are okay. And it's like, no, let's bring that back. That's not where that conversation needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, like, obviously, like, different cultures, things work differently. And I know at the very least, in the United States, and possibly England, it was very much well, let me speak in America because I know that better. I mean, America was LGB and sometimes T, so it's very much other people making a hierarchy where trans people get sort of off to the side and less important. I know, but you remind me of the anti-trans conspiracy theories in Britain. I feel like it's largely Britain. That's got the really bad thing about, like, pharmaceutical companies trying to trans people into not being gay type thing.
Yep.
Which
No,
is different from what you're talking. What you're talking about is like cultural acceptance and some people making a hierarchy to try desperately to be accepted, sort of like a Blair White.
Oh yes, yeah.
As opposed to the conspiracy theories, which implies that someone's forcing it onto other people, and that's not how.
Yeah. That's truly vile to me that TERFs have taken that angle of exploiting the struggles of gay people to try and harm trans people. Because I'm willing to bet money that the vast majority of the people who are like kind of pushing this narrative would have a few years ago probably not considered themselves in favor of gay marriage.
Well, a large majority, I assume, are straight men.
Yeah. Oh, and unfortunately, there is a pretty significant like woman presence in TERFdom. Sadly, I don't want to say they claim that they're feminists, but like obviously, we all know that if your feminism doesn't include trans women, then like you're not a feminist.
Well, yeah, and also if your entire movement focuses more on trying to kick trans people down than fighting for women's rights, I mean, that the focus is wrong.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just my muddy dog just jumped up on the bed. I need to go politely ask him to leave.
Okay.
1 second.
Perfect.
But yes,
You're from somewhere in America.
yes, Virginia.
How are do you know anything about the LGBTQ community? I know you're the token straight guy. Oh, I was told by Christy to not use the token joke, but like, what's people's attitudes in Virginia?
It works, but there would be a lot of the reaction of, so you decided to become a guy so that you could be gay? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh wow.
Yeah, see, it the total misunderstanding of not having a clue about what's going on. It is a fairly regular thing where you go, they just have not, they have no information on the subject.
This assumption that heterosexuality is just the like, oh, that's the default, like that's what everyone starts
That's the
as
goal.
and should
Don't
want
you
to
understand?
be. Yeah, gotta be straight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that would be an awful lot of that's but once again, tourism, which is fairly big in this area, well, tourists can do whatever they please. That's okay.
Yeah, I get the impression that seems to be a popular attitude. It's okay if the tourists do it, just not one of our own.
Well, that to me really speaks to how, I guess, threatened people are personally by things, like the idea that the closer that it exists to you as a person, the more threatening it feels. So like in the case of Bahamians, if tourists are coming to the Bahamas and they're queer, well, like they might not like it, but whatever, who cares? That's fine. Live and let live. But as soon as Bahamians themselves are queer and expressing queerness in any capacity, it says it's like my identity is now under attack because I share this trait with these people. And rather than sort of take time, and we see this isn't, obviously is not unique to people in the Bahamas. This is something that we see everywhere. We see it in like small town Canada. It's a major thing that if someone comes out as queer in small town Canada, certainly when I was younger, it just wasn't really something that you did because of course then people would immediately get threatened. And it's really sad that people react so defensively rather than asking themselves why they feel the need to get defensive in the first place. Sorry, I think my partner's making a smoothie.
Yeah, but I think that we're coming to a lot of things that are fairly universal. I don't know. But I think that there are cultural differences, and there definitely is differences in cultural flavor, but I'm less privy to them than the other people in this room.
I mean, I have not been in Minnesota. I was in Fargo, North Dakota once for like a convention style thing, like a nerd convention style thing. I was in California once. The train going to California stopped for a brief bit in New Mexico. I was in Chicago for electrolysis. That's it. For like a day. I didn't even visit Chicago. I just like went in there, got a way too many hours of electrolysis, and then popped right back. So I'm still paying back that loan.
Oof, yeah. Yeah, any that's it's great. It's great that insurance and stuff and like healthcare up here and everything is covering more like trans affirming procedures. Really, really great that more often than not, insurance will cover like top surgery, bottom surgery. But when it comes to just like the little things, like all of those smaller procedures that you have to go in for multiple appointments for, it just like really, really adds up. It gets incredibly expensive.
Yeah. That said, we are close to 2/3 of the way through the show, so if you enjoyed our content, like, comment, and subscribe. Anyways, let's we were talking about it being or Perfict mentioned that it's they're universal aspects, and I'm not sure if universal is what I'd use, but like the majority of cultures have like certain defining things, because I feel like white nationalism got its fingers in a lot of countries, and if not white nationalism, certain parts of the brand of Christianity that hates gay people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's colonialism, right? Like any
Yes.
area, yeah, that colonialism touched, inevitably got infected with a lot of anti-queer attitudes and white supremacist attitudes, and oh boy, I'm still like, I'm torn, because I feel like there has been a, on the one hand, this massive influx of like kind of blatant white supremacy over the past few years, which of course, you know, like with Trump as a figurehead in the United States, that had a lot to do with it. But you wonder like how much of it is, you know, people being sucked in, and how much of it is just that they felt comfortable being open about it. Like, have they all,
Yeah.
you know, that they've always been here, they've just been like kind of afraid to be open. And now that that brings up the scary implication of why aren't they afraid anymore, which is a whole other topic.
Well, I mean, there are
Sorry, I'm
Nazi
going off on a
memorials
tangent
in
again.
Canada and in America, so
Ugh.
Yeah.
which is the awful bit. It wasn't. What, didn't someone get in trouble for defacing a Nazi memorial in Canada once? I mean, I'm sure that might have happened in America as well.
I feel like I should know about this. I don't. I do know that someone got in trouble for defacing a war memorial, but I don't think it was necessarily a, well, there are all kinds of, not necessarily like Nazi memorials, but statues that are commemorating like white supremacist figures and, you know, like violent colonial historical figures. And so people have defaced those, and that's been an issue. Not necessarily Nazis associated with like the
Here we
Nazi
go.
movement.
Canada police investigate vandalism of monument to Nazi troops as a hate crime. Graffiti spray painted in the monument to Nazi soldiers in a small Canadian city is being investigated by police as a hate crime. This is 2017. No, this is 2020. July 17th, 2020. This is why.
Oh my God.
Ontario spray painted to Santa Fe's commanding soldiers in the 14th SS division in an Ontario cemetery.
Why am I like, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised I didn't hear about this. But like when you said that, I believe you. Like when you were like, didn't a Nazi memorial get like, didn't people get shit for that? Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know why. I was actually talking about this just today. Canada is, white Canadians have this whole approach to, well, at least Canada's not like America. America's really racist. It's like, no, Canada's really racist. They just have better PR. Like,
Yeah.
for years, they've just been cruising on not America and therefore totally fine. And it's like, no, Canada has just a horrific history of racism. And
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff with the what was it? It was burning of there's a bunch of problems with attack.
oh, the residential schools.
There was something to do with the stuff that was bad Canada was doing with Indigenous people, and I can't remember which specific thing.
Canada has like committed genocide against Indigenous people.
I mean, America has too, by the way.
Well, yeah, no, of course, but like Canada has since
White
its
person
inception.
club right here.
Yeah.
The genocide club.
More recently, it was the discovery, and I'll explain why I'm using those quotes in a moment, of graves and, you know, the bodies of children beneath the property of residential schools. Now I say discovery because it was the Canadian government and the Catholic Church denying that this was a problem. Like, obviously, for years and years and years, like, Indigenous communities knew about this. And so the way that it was treated is like, oh, what a shocking discovery. It's like, no, y'all knew that this was happening and just didn't do anything about it. That's just one of the many things. And I mean, forced sterilization of Indigenous women as well is like still going on to this day. So Canada
that's going on in the concentration camps we have here in America.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Or at the very least, there was one report that came out that mentioned that happening.
Well, and it's not just mentioned it happening. They laid out the plan was eugenics. They were very clear. They were doing it for eugenics. I mean, doesn't have to be any mystery on that one.
Well, yeah, no, I just can't remember the resolution to that, if any. But I assume it's still probably going on. I can't imagine it stopping. But the unmarked graves things remind me of a story I did. Rainbow Shelter News, because I picked too many news stories. A couple of them were from Canada, and there was also like unmarked graves with disability place as well, because of course this is why intersectionality is important, because there's been eugenics programs for disability related stuff as well, people getting sterilized so because they don't want disabled kids.
Yep.
Or don't want the chance of disabled kids. So it's always eugenics with these people.
Up here right now, so there is a like medical assisted death thing like that's now available. I think I don't know if it's all across Canada. I know Ontario for sure. And personally, like I'm like a personal autonomy absolutist. Like for me, if someone's like terminally ill and would like to access that, I think that is an example of how, like, yes, it is good to allow people this rather than forcing them to die a horrible, agonizing like death that goes on far longer than it needs to. However, what we have happening is there are chronically ill and disabled people who are opting to access this, I hate to call it a service, because they can't afford rent, they can't afford a place to live, and with their illnesses can't be unhoused because like that's just they're going to die a slow, painful death if that's the case, right? So this to me is like having this available to people because they cannot afford to be alive. Like that's eugenics again. Like we've gone back to, and it's a thing that in concept, having this available to people is important. But the way that it's being used is, once again, they've like snuck eugenics onto the table and are just playing it out because it's what they fucking do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Perfict gave the okay to get off topic, so I will just go all the way down that road of that relates to an ideal version of what it means to be human and how humans should be.
Mm-hmm.
And if people aren't that, then they deserve to die, is essentially the mentality. And many people who deal with eugenics stuff don't want to necessarily directly perform eugenics, but they'll look the other way.
Yep. Well, they don't want to call it what it is. Like they really don't want to, if it's like in the cases of people being sterilized without their knowledge or consent, or being misled into believing that they need to be sterilized, they'll be like, oh, that's like a medical malpractice. That's like a big no-no that they did. Or people who are in these like horribly desperate situations where they've just lost their homes and they're like, well, guess I'll die. They're like, oh, isn't it, like, oh, it's so sad that they're, that they feel like they need to do this. It's like, no, this is not a them problem. This is not a problem held by the people who are in this situation where they are that desperate. Like, this is, oh, call it what it is. Sorry, I'm very tangential today.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. What do you think might change Canadian or culture in Bahamas? You can start with whatever one you think. What do you think could make things improve things?
That's a tough one. As far as improving culture towards like trans people specifically in Canada, I think that we're kind of on the up and up. Like, more and more people are coming out. People just being out and living their lives. That's going to sort of keep doing a lot of the heavy lifting. In the Bahamas, there are more and more transgender Bahamians who are coming out. That's actually what that article that I pulled up from 2019 is all about. That there's, like, trans people are finding each other, they're organizing, they're having these conversations, they're making it clear that this isn't just, it's not trans people exist elsewhere. It's like, no, trans people exist in the Bahamas as well. Like, we're here, it's fine, life is continuing as it always has. Like, God isn't raining down like hellfire on anyone because like queer people are out. It is okay. As far as what's actually going to help, this is, I wish I had a good answer for that. I wish that I had something sort of, I guess, a call to action or something inspiring to say here. For me, what I want to do and how I want to, like, contribute just as one person is to connect with the people in this article and ask them, like, I don't have a big following, but like I do have a modest like platform, how that could maybe be used to be helpful. Like, what actions Bahamian citizens can take. Like, is it worthwhile to go down and be like, hey, I need to change my legal gender marker? I know that's not a thing that you offer, but maybe you should start.
Yeah,
maybe now's the time. Writing letters probably is how it begins.
Well, I mean, that's one aspect of things. I was you mentioned connecting with people, and I was reminded of I don't know if you watch Beau of the Fifth Column.
No.
He's an American from one of the states. I always forget which one for sure. It's my own
Beau.
personal. What?
He might be from northern Florida, but
He might also be from Kentucky. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's from one of the states, one of the eastern states. And he mentioned some of the basics of some of the aspects of organizing, which is to create a group of like 8 to 12 people, and each one of those people has like other people they know, and it just sort of branches out so you can organize things. I don't know if that's helpful at all. I totally recommend. He did this relatively recently. Apparently he's talked about how to form communities with stuff, because a lot of positive change involves like a lot of different tight-knit communities, and that's part of how the Republican Party got into as much power as they did. That's part of it. I mean, there's other stuff with relation to it, but it's just my thought process for that sort of stuff, because or my thought process of stuff I want to try to figure out how to do, because I don't I don't socialize too much. I I say while streaming. Outside of streaming, I don't socialize as much as you'd think.
Past 3 years haven't really favored it either.
That's also true. It doesn't help that one of my childhood friends who I would hang out with in person works in the dental field. So she doesn't want to like, even if we're all vaccinated, she doesn't want to because she works at, you know,
Right.
one of the higher risk places. So she doesn't want to increase risk to us, and she's concerned about that. I mean, we're all vaccinated, and I get it. I mean, it's a pandemic going on, but it still sucks to have to do that on on Zoom. But that being said, outside is scary. Like, I have to be very aware of my transness outside.
Yep.
Um,
You actually bring up something kind of important there. The general awareness of if like on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say, like, as a passing trans person in Canada, my awareness of my transness day to day is like a 1. I'm more aware of my perceived gayness as like a man in a relationship with another man. That to me is more salient. As a Bahamian, like being down in the Bahamas, I would say that my awareness of my transness is like a 9. Like, just sort of the general, like, how I conduct myself, how people interact with me, you know, which bathroom I go into, like all of these things are a lot more present in my mind, for sure.
I feel like I'm 6 or 7. Usually it's just, it depends on the place I go, to be fair. Like, if I go to some place a lot and people treat me fine and they don't like misgender me, then it's like, okay, this place is cool. But if it's a place I haven't been to before, well, then it's up a bit higher, because it's like, well, when's the shoe gonna drop? When is someone going to start calling me sir as aggressively as possible?
Yeah.
Which that happened, and obviously I'm white, so I don't deal with the black trans women are the people at like the most risk of violence occurring against them. Just hands down in America, and probably in a few different other countries as well. Probably Britain as well.
It's definitely true up here too. Black and indigenous trans people, particularly trans feminine people.
Yeah. Yes, and yes, indigenous people here as well. That definitely would factor in, but I'm less familiar. I'm not super familiar with indigenous culture. The super white person is not familiar with indigenous culture. That's I'm just aware of some of the horrible things that governments have done. Really, and I also don't want to speak for people. I'm aware of the deaths, and almost all the deaths when I see them. Like a good majority is black trans women, and I don't want to like pretend. I live in Minnesota, which is not like the most hateful state, and it's not, my life is not at risk. There's probably there is some risk of me getting the shit beaten out of me. There is still technically some risk of that, but it's not as bad as it could be. It's the more likely thing is someone being all like, "You're one of the transgenders," just like,
Just kind
I
of
don't wanna
making your
talk
day
with
really
you.
shitty. Yeah. Yeah.
That happened at Target like a couple weeks ago.
Mm.
Or aggressive misgendering.
Aggressive misgendering, microaggressions are a big one. Like those, like, oh, I have like someone you've never talked to. They like interact with you once, and they're like, my niece just came out as transgender, and you're like, okay, I guess we're just gonna go ahead and clock and out me right now. Like, okay, all right, cool, thanks, great. So glad we could all be part of this.
Well, I mean, there's also the possibility of you being inspiration porn, where someone at a workplace where you had to out yourself, all of a sudden, someone you've never met before in the workplace talks about how like proud you are that you had the bravery of coming out.
Yep.
What do you mean you don't know them? Don't all trans people know each other?
That's actually, so that is, I'm just gonna say it. I know so many trans people, and it's the worst when a cis person is just like, oh, you're like a trans person who makes YouTube videos. Do you know so and so? And I'm just like, yes, but you shouldn't just assume that that's the case. Like, you're right, but shut up.
Yeah, well, that's partially because of, or at the very least for me, I have been on trans Twitter a decent amount. So, like, someone will be like, "Oh, so and so came out," and I'm just like, I knew that like a month ago. I didn't bring it up." Or, I know, Sterling, before they came out, they were heavily implying that they were going to come out. What with jokes involving estradiol and spironolactone, it's just like, I know what those pills are.
Well, we're getting
going
late
on
in the
here.
show, and I just want to get this out before we get to the closings.
Yes.
With the Roe versus Wade thing
Yes.
for trans people, that's the warning shot. They're coming for you. They will be coming for you.
I mean,
with
like
legislation
I
and
mentioned
all
to
kinds
you,
of things. Yeah.
Like I mentioned to you
talking about the
outside,
future.
they've been coming for trans people
Oh, yeah.
since the bathroom bill. Like,
Yeah.
they haven't stopped. Like I said, then like the rest of the lesbian, gay, bisexual communities are the people who are probably the least, or who are significantly less likely to be aware than the trans people, because we've been saying it since the bathroom bill that they're coming for that.
But you're small and you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they're going to be making their legislative bones.
Yeah, they mentioned. Oh, sorry.
Establishing the principles is what I'm saying. That they can do what they want with whoever they want.
Yeah, and oh.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so in the bill, they mentioned, and I can't remember if I covered this in the Rainbow Shelter News or whatnot. I'm just gonna continue to promote the show that I upload the VODs of here. They mentioned how there are problems with the interpretation of the law that went around with Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry,
it's one of those things where if a word goes on enough in your head and you're just like, is that a word? Is that right? Anyways.
They usually shorten it. They usually shorten it to Roe v. Wade.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it like kind of, that might be where your brain is being
Yeah.
rude to you.
But yeah, so they mentioned stuff like the sodomy laws and the other stuff relating to the Privacy Act, which is the reason for the passing of Roe v. Wade. So like, it is. By the way, it is the V versus.
Yeah.
M says first queer rights, then the ADA. Oh, and Prim says, yeah, we know Perfict, which is how I felt. But yes.
I think where it just like the attack on transgender rights, like it hasn't stopped, because we haven't really won them, and they've been digging, like the people who are barring us from said rights have been digging their heels in since we started demanding that we have them. Where it was really, I guess it's always been dire, but where it really kind of sunk in for me is when they started going after kids, when they started going after trans youth, and they started going after trans families, and they're trying to tear families apart. They're trying to stop children from being able to participate in sports with their friends. Like, they're trying to separate teenagers from their communities. They're trying to implement laws that where they actually examine children's bodies, and they just completely, like, literally legally violate them. That was when I was like, oh, this we're in hell now. Like, it's time to get really serious, because we're in hell, because they have boldly and unapologetically gone after children. And that was,
Yeah, and if they get stuff with children, then they're like, oh, you're not supposed to transition until you're 25. Oh, and then, like, not until you're 30, and then not until you're on your deathbed. Like, it's very... It is abhorrent.
Yep.
And once again, like, it's people in specific states who are going to be affected the most, but it's like way too close to half the states. It's like 2/5 of the states are just like, yep, all these laws, and that state map is where I see Minnesota, and then surrounded by a bunch of states that'll have anti-abortion legislation. Minnesota has state legislation that makes abortion legal, so Minnesota is fine-ish. Like, I live in a relatively safe state when it comes to my rights. Like, all the trans rights is in state legislation and has been since like the 90s. Technically, that doesn't make people not awful and not always follow those laws, but at this point,
lots of states passed discriminatory, horrible laws concerning gays and trans people and so on.
Yep, I boosted someone's campaign to try to get out of Texas.
Because they were popular. You can sell it to the people that you're going to pass these laws. You sell that you passed them, but the federal laws take precedent. So if the federal laws get changed, all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of states that have already existing laws that are problematic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's one of those things where.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying with, they're coming. That's gonna be happening. There will be attempts to do that.
Yeah, there will be, and the amount of pushback is going to depend on the state. From zero pushback to a lot of pushback. And not even just state, the city, because the Twin Cities is different from the state of Minnesota. But I mean, that's, to some degree, that's true of all the states. Like, the main where people are visible, it's harder to dehumanize them.
Yeah. Oh, that's just another interesting thing that came up. One of the things that I like is that when they have somebody on a show and they're gay and it's not part of the plot. This is not a very special episode. It isn't about their being gay. They're just gay and they're a minor character, and that's all there is to it, because there are gay people in the office. That's just how it is. The guy's at his job, and there was a gay person. Understand? Who we found out that they were gay because they asked about the person's partner, and it was they ask a guy about their husband, and you go, oh, so they're gay. And it registers for you, but nothing is ever done about it. It's impossible to do that with trans people. It's really hard to do that where they are not somehow making a big signal about their being trans, or that it's about their being trans somehow.
I mean, like, sorry, go
I was
on.
gonna say, I don't think I don't think so. It depends greatly on the show and the premise and the level of realism. So like, because there is still discrimination about the gay couple in the American version of The Office.
Oh, well, I wasn't even thinking of The Office, but I'm just particularly. I mean, I've seen a few of them. Okay, a cop show where a guy just talking with somebody, And,
well, yeah, but I mean, the other thing is with minor characters, it's very easy for it to just be very far too throwaway, and then you can just still other them. So like, Arcane, you have Caitlin and Vi, who are two major characters, and those two women are very clearly going to hook up. And they're hitting all the stereotypical relationship beats. They just happen to be two women. But that takes place in a universe where it doesn't matter so much. So you can have people transition and it not be about them transitioning, but it might still be a story. I mean, technically, Jadzia Dax is arguably about transitioning, or someone having transition, and that was not a major aspect of the story. It was just a thing. But that was also a metaphor, which doesn't help. I don't know. You potentially had something else to say, Ben.
Oh no, I was just I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding the observation correctly. And I think just like about making characters like kind of hyper fixating on their gayness or their transness and making that sort of the pivotal aspect of the character.
I'm saying that on a cop show, the cop is interacting with another cop and says to them that they are, have your husband bring the potato salad that he brought last time to we're having a cookout, and have him bring it went over really well. Right? And you go, okay. And that means that there's going to be some violence against gay people or something during the episode. It's going to be coming up. But when they don't do that, I go, yay! You just included a person who was unimportantly gay.
Right. So when they're not foreshadowing some kind of like, oh, we're making sure this character is gay so that we can tackle some homophobia shortly thereafter.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, no, yes. I agree that problem is, it's the minor thing, because there's been, it feels like, even though it's probably only been like the past 10 years that this has happened a lot, it feels very, it's been a lot of minor characters and and very few major characters being allowed to be gay or trans or any of that, and which which is a different thing. Although I don't know what's the show Elliot Page is in.
Umbrella Academy.
Is that it? I mean, their character is effectively going to be canonically trans because of Elliot Page, I believe, and that's it. That's the reason. I think that's the case. I can't remember. It's like one of those things where it related to filming a new season.
Yes, Elliot Page's Umbrella Academy character will come out as trans.
Yeah, so that will potentially be an example. Brim mentions sacrificial token gay. Yes, the sacrificial token gay is a problem. Or no, sorry, that would be spoilers for a movie. But yeah, no, that is a problematic thing. Or token trans, like, oh, this person is this person. This character who is a sex worker, well, they're trans and therefore should be treated like a dude, and they're also dead because they were killed. It's like, oh, that's how you're going to do it.
Yeah. See that.
Or having a character who is like actually, like a character who just kind of is presented as their gender, is correctly their gender, and then it's revealed that they're trans and then they die. Like as soon as their transness is made known to the audience, it's just like, oh wow, this character just so happens to be trans. And it's just like either they're just being like casually cool, this is a trans person, or they're going to die. Like they're probably going to die. Like I've seen that happen a fair amount as well, particularly on like Law and Order is bad for that. Of like finding out a character's trans and then suddenly something really awful and horrible and traumatic happens to them. It's like,
I will always promote the documentary, which I already forgot.
Oh, Disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
They go over that a lot. So I will always promote. If you happen to be watching the show and not trans, and want to know a little bit about the trans experience, Disclosure pretty much sums up a good amount about the trans experience and how trans people feel about other people. There is a lot of dissing of Caitlyn Jenner and her privileged attitude. But that being said, we should be ending the show soon. Perfict, where can people find you?
They can find me here or on Discord. I appear there. If you type my name in at the Fluid Voice Discord, send me an @ odds are I will at least respond to it in text. Or there's also, of course, the Rumpus Room.
Yes,
which you can find through the Fluid Voice Discord.
I don't know how to find a link to that, and I keep forgetting to ask you.
I'm pretty sure there's one at the Rumpus Room. I'll make sure there is.
Okay, so then I can copy that for the episodes. I forgot where that was.
Okay, I'll post it in the Fluid Voice Discord. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Fantastic, Mr. Fox. Where can people find you, and is there anything you're working on that you'd like to promote?
So I am primarily active on YouTube as Finntastic Mr. Fox. You can also find me over on Twitter under the same name and Instagram. Don't post on Instagram quite as much, but that is definitely where you can go if you want to see pictures of my dog. Mostly active on Twitter and YouTube, and currently I'm working on far too many things, which is why none of them are out in a timely manner, because I am split between them. However, mostly what I've been talking about recently is the topic of masculinity and just sort of positive masculinity and how I have approached and unpacked masculinity being a trans man, and what that has looked like and felt like for me. So that's kind of the focus currently. I also have a project on sort of xenogenders and just kind of talking to people who are of a xenogender about their experiences. I also will be hopefully updating the masculinity discussion, talking to specifically transmasculine people and non-binary people of color about their experiences, because obviously mine could not capture that side of things. So that is what you can expect from me more recently. And then further down the line, who knows? I'm kind of all over the place with topics.
Okay. And me, you can find me at Ozma In The Dark on Twitch, YouTube, and you can also find me in the Fluid Voice here. Instagram. I mean, technically I have a TikTok. Technically I'm on mastodon.lol and Twitter as well, but Twitch and the Fluid Voice and my own personal YouTube are like the places where I'm easiest to find. Maybe Mastodon. Technically OzmaInTheDark.com. I mean, also I think I have a link sys in here. I'm in far too many places and I'm very stretched thin. But I on Twitch, I generally stream Monday through Wednesday at 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. I stream League of Legends because I'm a weird esports nerd type person. The community is terrible half the time. Half the time they're terrible. About like a third of the time they are silent, and then a small portion of the time they're either really queer or genuinely nice people. There was like a really nice person I saw on League once who was just like, it's okay if you screwed that up, we can all work together type thing, and I was just like, who are you? League of Legends does not you don't belong here, you're too nice. I mean, to be fair, I don't care if people mess up either. It's a game ultimately, but yeah, and I'm also going to rant on Ozma In The Dark about nationalism, because I have stuff to rant about tomorrow on 1 p.m. Eastern for a bit. And Rainbow Shelter News is also streamed on Twitch, and I will pick less stories so it won't last for 2.5 hours, which was too much. That was too much for me. That's a problem for me. But yeah, I'll try to do largely American and some international stories for the week. That being said, your voice matters, your life matters, and gosh darn it, you matter. Bye, everybody.
Peace.